I need a gavel. I have I'd like to offer a thought for invocation today. And it's that we are grateful for the people, the resources and the environment here in our community. We thank you, God, for the blessings that you have given us. Does anybody have any other thoughts they want to add? Okay. Please stand for the pledges. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
the Texas flag, pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Do you have any comments from the public? See a couple of people.
Yeah, you're on the agenda. Time I would go.
Okay. Are there any requests for adjustments? Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
On motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're moving along today. What I want to propose is that the SJRA, I've watched y'all's presentations at Mud 47 and the Board of Trustees, and I'm thinking y'all take about an hour and something. And what I was gonna propose is that we take the first half hour of our meeting and do the mud agenda items, and then turn the remainder of the hour or the hour and a half over to you.
Your agenda. However you want to do it. Yeah.
And I'm thinking that'll focus that we've got to finish our stuff in a half hour and let y'all, I think you can cover everything you've got in that time period. So item number 11 is a request, or is on the agenda. Tom put it on the agenda. Is a request from Alan Hedengren. And it says, consider and authorize stakes and signs for no mowing zones. And this is on the Spindle Tree Detention Basin on the west slope. No mowing zones, possibility of temporary irrigation, plantings on the east side of the Spindle Tree Basin and northeast side of the Spindle Tree Basin. Alan wrote a description of his request, and it's in your packet. And we can get Alan to discuss it if y'all have questions.
I suppose my question would be on the possibility of irrigation. And so it says the township funds irrigation on its property, and Mud 46 funds irrigation on its property. So I thought that, like, collectively, and I could be entirely incorrect, so please address that. I thought that we were going to try to not have Mud 46 money spent towards this project initially. And I suppose I kind of want an overview of what the irrigation part of it would entail, how it's separated out, how it's metered, what would we be obligated to do, and considering the cost of water, especially in these months. Yes, plants need water, but I think a lot of us are probably limiting our irrigation to what's needed, just because of the weather and the cost of water. So maybe you could address that.
Okay. Well, I'll try to Anyway, if I missed any, let me know.
You're fine.
I think your first point was the MUD voted several meetings ago to not fund any irrigation. And I listened to that. I went back and reviewed that. I wasn't at the meeting.
Mhm.
And there was a motion, or there was something that passed. I wasn't clear whether that just referred to the township's property or if that was the MUD's property.
It was clearly the township property. The proposal was to, we'd go 50-50 with the township in repairing the irrigation system up there on the hill, top of the hill,
Okay,
and that was rejected. It was clearly, we rejected that idea.
okay.
On this one, I had a conversation with Mustafa Bedouin. He used to be the president of Houston Area Research Center on Gosling. And what they did in their Platinum Lead building was that they put in a temporary irrigation system on all the trees that they planted. And it was built where the pipe was just laid on top of the ground and the lines to the plants were laid on top of the ground. It was intended to be functional for a year. And so far, I haven't found an estimate of what it costs to irrigate that 1,700-foot run that Alan's concerned about. But I was thinking if it was in the range of $5,000 to $10,000, y'all might be willing to support.
So the one thing I would mention, Mike, maybe if there's something that predated me, let me know. I'm not aware of MUD 46 participating in any what would be deemed as recreational facilities. So this is not a water sewer drainage for, it's not necessary for slope stability. This would purely be for screening. And irrigation would not be considered a park and recreational facility. MUDs, the Woodlands have not spent funds for those types of facilities. That's been in the domain. It used to be community associations, and then that was turned over to the townships in terms of separating responsibilities. So that would be, unless I'm missing an instance.
No, that's right. It was a screening.
Design. So that would be a change in policy going back as far as I can recall.
Is that outside of our, is there a state law that keeps that outside of our scope? Or,
So that gets a little complicated.
Okay, that's why I
Next
asked
time you
you.
want to ask,
Yeah.
how long you want to talk about it.
just a couple of minutes.
The short answer is the MUDs traditionally were water sewer drainage, period. The legislature did go in the 90s or early 2000s and added park and recreational facility powers to what districts could do. They subsequently added road powers. That would carve out for the Woodlands, actually, for the authority to be able to issue recreational facility bonds. And even though Montgomery County was included, the Woodlands was excluded because the community associations were already in place at the time and already handled that. So I think there was an effort, again, this predated me, but my understanding of it was that the point was to prevent double fees, because the community association at the time had assessments. They were responsible for all the rec. And if you had a MUD come in on top of that and start spending money for other recreational facilities and charging additional fees, that will charge, put more of a tax burden or water sewer burden, overall fee burden on the residents of the Woodlands. So that's the answer on bonding authority and legal authority in general for park facilities. So technically, yes, a district does have park and recreational facility powers. You could not bond for it in theory, or use your maintenance tax would be questionable. You could use excess water sewer revenue, but then you have to go through the exercise of confirming that whatever surplus you have in your reserve is all water sewer revenue as opposed to maintenance tax. And we know all that's been.
That can't be done.
Yeah. So we generally not done that. Legally, can you? Yes. Could you say per again is all the way that goes out for expenses is initially maintenance tax revenue. So whatever you got left over is water sewer revenue, and you could use that for cash paying for some park and recreational. You could talk about going down that road, but to my knowledge, Mud 46 and other woodlands buds have not.
Okay.
I know it's in a large expense, but it's a policy change, even if it's a small expense. Just want y'all to be aware of that before you go too far down the road.
There would be a savings, and I'm not sure that to cover the savings, the cost savings over time, that area would become like a no mowing area. And so that there would be a savings from not mowing that area, if you maintained it with irrigation. And may I ask a question about who you're saying MUDs don't fund recreation? Who funds recreation on MUD property in the woodlands?
Township.
Township says it's not our land.
Well, I mean, that's something would have to be worked out between the township and MUD.
It still is a detention facility. It's not a recreational facility.
You know, I think we probably talked on this subject the first time we went around. And, you know, sometimes if, it's maybe better to start small. This is a very big project. We talk about this, the linear foot involved. And, I think you might find that, I haven't heard the township agree to this proposal yet. The last time we went here.
The township,
Have
we've
they
talked to
changed?
Mike Beeks,
Okay,
and he basically says, I'll take care of what's up on the
Okay.
top of the hill.
so,
The development company has given them the land, or their rights to
Right.
the land
the township.
up at the top of the
Top of the
hill.
hill. Yeah, I would think that's a good place to begin. And, you know, I have a document here that I'm going to talk about. We've handed it already that, you know, we're looking at almost 100% increase in water rates over the next 10 years.
Well, let's stay.
I know, I'm just saying it's that, you know, we're being asked to increase our base costs for something that we traditionally have not done. I mean, and I think it's.
Today, what's happening is the people across the street are running a water hose across the street and irrigating the trees that Alan and his neighbors have planted.
I understand.
I suppose it'd be the same like in my neighborhood. I'm in a cul-de-sac, and so I have a, wide area of wooded, wooded area. Doesn't have grass on it. But if I decided that I wanted more trees in that little cul-de-sac, I guess I would have to pay my homeowner because I wanted the trees. Because I didn't want to look at my neighbors across the cul-de-sac or whatever. I would have to run my hose and do that because the township doesn't water. I've never seen them water. I don't know if they water my cul-de-sac.
We have about 300 trees planted currently that need irrigation on them.
Do you have it in both zones? I mean, the right of way of the township and the right of way of the,
They're on the MUD property, right?
what's that?
All the 300 trees have been planted in the last 2 months on the MUD property.
Oh, MUD
where
properties.
we're authorized to plant.
Yeah.
And I have state homeowners that allow us to tap up.
Yep.
And just run a couple 100 feet hose down. Takes about 3.5, 4 hours to water.
So how many trees do you have on the township property?
I haven't planted any on it.
Oh,
We don't have authorization to plant, and the township is gonna plant their own.
And right now, it's really hard to get those trees to grow. Because I've been trying to grow trees in my backyard.
I mean, I live in a circle. And, it's large enough that the township mows it and plants trees.
Yeah.
But they plant trees with no water. And so surprisingly, there's a good number of trees, in that area, but, they'll plant a bunch and then half will die and the others will take root and go. Now it's flat. It's not on a hill. So,
Howard Hughes planted trees on their property, about 300 trees recently, with black, not when they irrigated it. It's drip line irrigation, so the water usage is not much, but the capital expenditure to put the drip line in is gonna be expensive.
So in the interest of moving along, would I be able to get a motion to do the rest of the items that are on agenda item 11 without the mention of irrigation?
So the rest of the items, can we just go through them so we all know exactly
Sure.
what we're gonna agree to?
Yeah. You want to talk to them?
Yes. You have the letter I sent to the board. Okay, that clarifies, so there's, this posting signs and stakes, there's no mowing zones. Just to protect the 300 trees we have planted. And Mike and Randy were out and showed us where we could plant, so it's just to stake that off.
The stakes and the ribbons and whatnot, something you're gonna put up or we're gonna put
I was planning on that. We'll probably use like wooden stakes, so it's biodegradable.
up? Yeah, that's fine. Just some kind of
Yeah.
marking.
Yeah.
We can see.
On the east side of the basin, Mike and Randy marked an area that was, they felt like was outside the easements. And so it's limited to maybe a fifth of the whole length. At number 4, authorize and review easements, and identify planting and after regrowth areas on the northeast side of the basin. That would require them to come out and mark the easement. There's a sewer pipe, and I believe it's probably 20 feet on each side that we probably have to leave not plant within that area, but there's still some areas that would love to plant some trees. So
We can mark those.
Okay.
that's something you can do, Mike.
Yeah, we can.
I don't have any questions on any of those items. And I guess I would just want to know, like, what our path forward on the irrigation issue. Would it be, we need to look into it more, or is it we just can't do it? We're very sorry, but policy.
I guess I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I mean, it's from a purely legal perspective, if you say you're using surplus, or sewer revenue, can you legally fund? Yes. Would it be a change in policy? Yes. And so that's when it gets back to, does the board want to change historic policy on recreational, facility expenditures?
You know, right now, we're using more money than we're bringing in as revenue. We don't really have surplus funds.
I just want to be able, that you have a clear direction of what our position is.
I would also, out of curiosity, I always like names on things that have to be done, so. It says here that the township fund, that someone's gonna work with township from the mud to make this happen.
Tom has spoken with Chris Nunes.
Tom
Yes, he's got.
Welkoff? Okay. So what we're saying is Tom has put his name up to do the heavy lifting of these tasks.
Well, I mean, he's had some dialogue with.
Maybe that brings up a question. If Tom and the village association pays for the watering, is that acceptable?
Since they get a budget of 10,000 a year, that,
They don't have any inflows right now, but they have some charity golf tournaments, some other
Yeah,
things that are helping to raise some funds, but
So
I don't-
where do you think the Woodlands Township is in this discussion?
surprised they didn't offer their services when you said that's been the precedence.
Well, I'm thinking of roads, right of ways. Where, there's irrigation and those are owned by the counties.
I'm worried about, we're running out of time.
All I can speak to is mud policy with mud hasn't in the past, so.
So what do you need from us? Do you need a motion on items?
I want to get approval for the stakes and signs. Is it possible to get approval for planting on the east side of the basin?
Which number is that?
3.
That area is marked.
And number 4.
I'll make the motion for 1, 3, and 4.
A second. Do I hear, I guess all of who agree, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So that's 11.
Well, no actions necessary there, Metro took action on that. Kind of move things along.
How about, let's skip down then to 16.
Attorney's report, the legislative summary was released yesterday evening. It's on the Google Drive, so take a look at that as you have time. Any bills that have implementation will be coming to our clients in the coming months to bring y'all any changes we need to make to policies or documents. That's all I have in the attorney's report. Happy to answer questions if you have.
Go on to number 17.
That's a deferral item. We're working, trying to get a meeting set up for each loft. Right.
It's already set.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll carry that one forward.
There'll be a report on the meeting. I guess the next time we have an event, we'll send a summary of it to Shelley and she'll distribute it.
Number 18, I don't know what this one is.
This is a wastewater line rehab project that's been in design for quite a while, waiting for approvals. It finally got approvals. The project was bid on June 1st. The
Wastewater line, is it?
wastewater, not water.
Yeah. Where is it?
It's around the Google.
So it's in Mud 46 property.
Yeah, a portion of it is in yours, a portion of it is in Metro, a portion of it is in Mud 6. and so forth. You have the small.
It's false.
Your portion is less than.
How much?
Less than 40,
Less than 40 for us.
I think so.
Yeah, there was one bid received from Texas Pride Utilities. The total project was $1,238,280. The engineer's estimate was 1.6, almost 1.7. So it's well under the engineer's estimate. So Garver has made recommendation award. We need your concurrence with that recommendation award.
It's not in your budget. It's been in there for a while.
Okay, good. That was one of my questions is how is it gonna get paid? And
It was budgeted.
so one bidder on this because they don't need the work and they're just like, we're cool, we don't need to make money or,
We've asked, there was 20 plan holders. We expected 5 to bid,
yeah.
and only one showed up.
only one.
We're trying to gather information on why.
Has anyone worked with Texas Pride Utilities?
Garver had, that's why they made the recommendation. In my previous job, I've worked with them as well. So
A good contractor, not like a change order contractor.
not that I recall.
Okay,
Which was our part.
Mike said about 40. Roughly. It's there it's broken out in that spreadsheet. for you.
I couldn't understand what that was. Okay, thank you.
very smushy.
It is.
Can't read this.
So just need concurrence of that ROA.
Your motion to accept.
Motion accept.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
This doesn't pertain to the motion, but will there be notices put on residents' doors of the construction in the area or any notification on the website saying construction? Because I know the SGRA has like a place on their website where they say this is what's ongoing.
We'll work through that.
Okay.
I think, Mike.
Yeah.
Next item is Lone Star. Consider Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District Phase 3 subsidence study. That's in your packet as well. We received a letter from Lone Star in May. Basically, the letter plus potential funding to help them with Phase 3 of the subsidence study for some coring. Again, it talks about also identifying some potential sites for the core locations. Since this letter this week at SBA GRP meeting, Jim Spagner presented or talked to the GRP board and suggested that really funding isn't what they're focused on at the moment. They're more focused on identifying the sites. So if you look at that map on the third page of it, there's a map that shows 50, well, 48 to 50.
Yeah.
The map's on 50. Those would be they kind of just spread it out to get a representative sample of the whole county. But they'd identified, Jim had identified that there was, I think, 2 sites that they were aware of that they might be looking at. And then SJ noted that they might have 2 sites also somewhere on this map.
So this one here that says Woodlands area, that's really down towards Grogan's Point.
It's,
No, this is just a general, yeah, these are not actual areas.
If you had one down towards the eastern part of Mud 46, that's high risk for subsidence. That would be interesting to us.
I've been at all those luncheons with these guys were spoke, and I thought they were looking at the waste treatment plant, one piece of land there to put this sensor, right? You drill a hole and you put a pole up. That's what I thought they said, but I could have been.
I think Ed mentioned there that the River Authority is visiting with Lone Star about 1 or 2 locations, 1 or 2 potential locations.
That may be one.
Yeah, and then I had also heard them talk, I don't see real quickly, that they're talking about a cost of 18 million. With 6 sensors total, 3 million apiece.
Million apiece.
Million apiece, or 3.
Yeah, that was, Spigner reported that maybe a couple months ago. And I think it was 1 or 2 million each, something like that. But that's not even documented in this letter. We even talked about
I
it.
guess I didn't see the number,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not there.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's any action to be had. It's just,
Well, they're gonna be appointing a replacement for Ms. Ryder, correct?
correct.
So would a fair approach to this, that we table it until they announce a new general manager?
Sure.
Anybody have a problem with that? Does anyone want to second it?
Table.
What are you asking?
With Samantha Ryder's departure from the Lone Star Association, what I suggested is that we wait until they appoint a new full-time general manager to not only add the detail of the dollars involved, but to confirm this is the way that they want to proceed with the new general manager at the helm.
But we weren't gonna take any action
I thought we did.
today. Yeah.
Okay, so we take no action. That's fine. I'm okay with that, because I was gonna postpone it anyhow, so it works.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good.
Save yourself a motion.
There you go.
Yeah, save myself a motion. Good.
Okay. Review and act on the resolutions in support of Jace Houston.
Yes, so in front of you, there's a resolution concerning estuary water management. It's called, it's a document that was kind of originated probably a month ago when legislative session was kind of doing all the maneuvering. It's morphed into this, been a little bit different now than it was. It's on about half the agendas of MUD agendas, and it's not on about half. The agendas that it's been on, those MUDs have decided to work with the general manager to finalize the wording and then authorize the president to sign the resolution. Those that it's not on the agenda, which it is on yours, obviously, are putting it on their July agenda for consideration. So a couple have deferred it since the decision won't be made anyway until July. And the others have said, go for it.
So Bob Lilac developed the first draft. He convened a meeting of presidents, MUD presidents, last Friday afternoon. I went for Tom, and this is the result of the conversation that we had. So there were a total of 5 MUDs represented at that meeting.
Yeah, the audience would be SRA, Lone Star, Township, possible media outlets.
So I'm a little bothered by the criticism of the state legislature. I mean, to me, you know, SRA is a state position, right? It's appointed by the governor in this position that the Senate has to approve. So to me, it's not inappropriate for the House or the Senate to take up the issue. And to me, I'll be honest with you, Jace has resigned. So it's a kind of a done deal. I mean, what are we trying to accomplish? with
And
this
that's come
resolution?
up a few times, and the best response we can give you is it was a grassroots resolution, just didn't come from staff. It was from, a handful of, one director in particular, and it got a little more momentum, but, that's about the best.
It's like,
What's the reality of where we are? He's resigned,
he's
and
on
now there's an active search going on. Has there been an appointment of a temporary general
That's
manager?
what happened tomorrow.
Thursday.
Okay, and has that person, has that been announced yet?
No,
No, it will be tomorrow though. Okay. So what purpose does this serve? I'm a supporter of Jay's. I think I have a lot of respect for a lot of things he does and has done. And I've got some issues with him too, but I think that the guy who steered the business into the current storm that it's in needs to see it through. That's my point of view. But apparently other powers have said, no, this is a different tack that we're taking. So I'm not going to fight that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what the purpose or what it's going to.
Now let's postpone another month. Is that okay with you?
We can do another call.
I'm in agreement with it, what everyone else has said. I don't understand the purpose at this point.
The only concern that was voiced in the meeting was that the Woodlands isn't being represented in this, conversation of, we need to change the direction of the SJRA. And
Kind of a wake up.
this was sort of a way to convey the concerns that the Woodlands has to the SJRA and other forces.
Well, maybe it'd be more appropriate to write a letter to our representatives.
I have all three representatives voted for the amendment. So Steve Toth and my representative, he has two precincts in the Woodlands, I always forget his name, and then Metcalf all voted for the amendment. And then,
I mean, I would think that would show our position if we address the representatives that voted.
but it's over.
And
They have to do that.
Been done.
It was have to do that, they didn't carry forward.
so I understand.
Yeah, it won't be
everyone's-
finalized anyway until July, so. Because the other boards need to.
Is it confirmed position?
No.
State? No, it's not.
No, it's under the authority of the board of
To-
directors
to-
of the board of directors of the river authority, who are appointed by the governor, but the decision on hiring.
It's board of directors.
Board of directors.
So the appointees to the River Authority Board, are they confirmed by the Senate?
No.
No, just
No.
straight
Appointed by
appointment by the governor.
Yeah, now there was discussion about changing that in the Senate hearing especially, but none of that was included in the legislation.
Yeah, I remember that. I read that, yeah.
All right, I said we'd do half hour of mud stuff and then turn it over to the SJRA. Yeah, unless y'all want to continue on and finish these last three items, I'll do that.
We finish and close them.
I can go real quick.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot. I was just gonna report, Jeannie and I, listened to a presentation from MCAD, Chief of President and our Regional Health last week, just to go over their proposed, 2024 budget. The high points include some, software, that their software is 15 years old. They're gonna change their software out, and then some additional budgeting for some increased ARB board, funding due to increased protests. So that was what the highlights of the budget. That budget will go into your budget, and really nothing to act on there. As Fred just mentioned, wanted to point out that Lone Star did accept the resignation of their general manager. And that marks essentially in 2023, by the end, all three of the major water agencies in Montgomery County will have new leadership. WWA and SJRA and Lone Star, which is pretty significant.
When is your resignation effective?
Last week.
Last week.
I guess it was immediate. My understanding.
I have one question on that. The effort by the SGRA board to find a replacement, is the WWA going to have any participation in that? Or
No.
MUD's going to have any participation in that?
No, they've, my understanding is tomorrow, they're going to announce the interim and then acting interim and then authorize a outside search firm to conduct the analysis.
And we're looking to get the budget approved before we get a new general manager for the SGRA?
I believe so.
That's, yeah, that's approval from trustees in August.
I'd like to make one comment then, just on personal consulting experience. When a major project acquisition or financial event occurs with a for-profit or commercial corporation, it's been my experience when they replace the senior person before the actual, or rather before the actual budget or action has been taken and the new person comes in, there can be a problem. And the problem being is that that new general manager doesn't have ownership of the process, the budget, the assumptions that went into it. And a lot of the research on engineering that Dave spent a lot of time researching since the last meeting. My concern is it's been my experience, it's a recipe for disaster. Meaning, if the project doesn't go well, runs over budget, doesn't hit its milestones, the new general manager can say, hey, I was given this. I'm not responsible for passing it. It was given to me to execute. And to me, for the stakeholders, it represents a risk. So I'm just bringing this out as a point of information and order that people consider that and take it to whichever board is making that decision, because I think it could be setting us up for problems long-term, especially with a 10-year plus budget and forecast that we're looking at. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And I just have a flashing amber light that it's a concern. I'm not saying it's a disaster now. It's a concern.
Point of clarification, all that is being approved in August is the 1-year annual budget, not the 10-year.
Great. Thank you. You've answered my question.
Yes.
Okay. I feel better now. Thank you.
When will the 10-year be on the agenda?
Well, that, they provide that for informational purposes, and then it is worked into the annual, also worked into the annual budgets. But in terms of larger capital expenditures that would require debt financing as part of that 10-year plan, that would come back to the MUDs as a supplemental agreement, similar to what we did back in 2017. So we're not there yet.
Okay.
Is there a timeline of when we'll get there?
Thank you.
Well,
Just gonna
part
ask
of it
it.
depends
Good
on,
job.
part of it depends on discussion about some of the components. I mean, we're having a very robust and needed discussion about AC lines, and don't want to kind of preempt what y'all be talking about in the River Authority report. But I think some of these are going to have to be more fully vetted before and what may end up happening, again, kind of spoiler alert on the AC discussion, is maybe taking it more piecemeal. And so there may be a component that's right to be replaced earlier. And instead of doing a supplemental for the entire kit and caboodle, we may need to debt finance a smaller piece. And so we do a supplemental for an incremental piece, and we take it bites at a time. Don't know how we're going to end up. Just saying, on the big piece, we're not there yet. It may take longer to get there, but we may have a piece that's ripe and needs to go. And in that case, we may do it as a piecemeal supplement.
Well, it's good news only in one regard. When we had the May 18th meeting for the 10-year plan at the SGRA, it was for all board directors to be there, and we only had a few board directors there. But we talked about setting up stopgaps or points to measure the milestones. And if you're saying that that's what the new situation is allowing us to do more specifically, I'm all in favor of taking a breath and evaluating what we do a year down the road or a few months down the road. So I'm in favor of not passing the full 10-year budget without these breaks to evaluate the success. So
It's fluid. I mean, to be frank, I mean, it's been evolving over the course of this week's MUD meetings just about this AC component, which of course the full 10-year CIP has got multiple components. This is just one of them.
Okay.
So
And
I
point
think
of clarification too, is it never was about approving a 10-year budget.
okay,
The
good.
10-year plan is like it's a CIP,
Right.
and the CIP is fluid. I mean, the CIP is just a roadmap to identify what might be coming. And, in my experience, you could look out into the CIP, identify a thing that 5 years ago you thought was gonna be needed in 5 years, and you get there and you say, well, I don't need to do that.
Perfect.
Okay, let's push it out.
That's
So,
great.
yeah, it was never about approving any expenditure on a 10-year model.
That's good. We got that out. Great.
Chris, are you ready to turn it over to you?
All right, I want to direct your attention to page 40 in your packet. Between page 40 and 45. So we received 16 questions from 2 MUD directors after the May 18th meeting that Fred just talked. We've gone through and we've answered those questions with our consultant. And there were 3 questions we were not able to answer. Questions 9, 10, and 11. On page 45, what you're going to see is our consultant had given us an estimate to answer those questions. So task number 1, which is a little bit more detailed break analysis for about 25,000. It would take about 6 to 8 weeks. Task number 2, which is the evaluation alternative AC line project schedules and consequences, is about 150,000 and would be 6 to 9 months. Basically, what these 2 tasks would do is take our existing data and just kind of look at it in a different lens, if you will, and see if anything changes. The existing data that we have is not complete enough to give any data that would move the needle or change the outcome at the end of the day. So the River Authority does not recommend moving forward with those 2 items. The last item you see on here is predictive modeling. Once again, we don't have all the information needed to help that go forward and be productive. But some of the stuff that Brian and y'all just chatted about may help that to be more of a interesting item to look at. So I'm gonna pass it over to Connie and see if she has anything to add.
Yeah, just want to open up the floor to see if you'll have any questions on what's been provided, and we're here to answer them.
So, you said 11 couldn't be answered, and just a point of note, Innovice is now Autodesk, not AutoCAD. Just a little slip up, it's not a big deal. And so what I'm seeing throughout this whole question and answer response is basically like, we don't have the data, we don't have the data, we don't have the data. And from the questions that are being asked, it seems as though the questions that the board of directors or whoever, I know I submitted them, the questions are, we don't want to proceed until we get data. Like, we need data to back up the cost of all this. So if we're at a point of some people need data, we don't have data, how do we bridge that to where we feel comfortable? And maybe the answer is data would require you to wait 10 years, like, and maybe that's not the correct answer. So I just want to know like how the 2 are going to merge.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me answer that.
Okay.
So some of the conversations we've been having this week with other board members and other boards that have come, and I think some of y'all have been listening to some of the videos, so I'm gonna try to be as consistent as I can be on what we've been talking about. So you've got some folks that are okay moving forward with what we've got. We've got some folks who want some more data. And so one of the things that we've kind of proposed, and I think Brian sort of mirrored this or kind of revealed a little bit, was we've got some data that shows that there is AC pipelines that are breaking. Now, is it the number per mile that some folks would want, like for AWWA? Maybe not necessarily, but it comes down to the level of service that's expected from the Woodlands. And you asked that question, Deidre, in the All Mud meeting, I believe. It was what level of service have you chose to design this to? And honestly, nobody likes it when a water line breaks in the Woodlands, and we get a lot of pushback when that occurs. And so even if it's just 3, like, we want to fix that problem. Now, is that what y'all are really asking of us? Is some of this conversation. So we started with Town Center. So Town Center is the downtown in the metro area, the commercial section with, big restaurants and very high impact when a water line fails. That's the first project. We've already got that under design. And that's really the one that we're proposing. It's got 9 breaks on the AC since 2015. So we're proposing that the impact of that from all of the commercial is pretty significant, and it's making some problems with just in general there in that area. And that's really where we're focused on. Sorry, somebody just called me and I had to decline it. distracted me. But hold on, so that's the area that we're proposing to go forward with first. With that, we don't have a lot of data. We've said this quite a bit. What we want to do is we're kind of looking at potentially taking that construction project, which doesn't start till 2025, and say, okay, as we're doing this, you're going to have pits for pipe bursting or for auger boring where we can identify some of the pipe, pull it out and test it, like some of the different documents that we've received. You know, I mean, there's lots of different ways to test the pipe itself. We want to look though at not just the test to compress it or to crush it or to dye it or to figure out how much that it's been calcified, whatever that is. That's one thing, but the gaskets, how is the embedment still sitting, at least in these areas that we're seeing? Every section where a different contractor installs, it's going to be a little different. In all the different places where the soils change or the water level is different, it's going to impact these AC lines differently. And so our
Connie,
first proposal is to collect there.
can I hit you with a different spin?
Absolutely, sir.
What I've watched the trustees meeting on the recording and also the MUD 47 meeting. And one of the things that came out of that to me was, I'm wondering, do y'all have a Six Sigma engineer on your staff?
No, sir.
And the reason I ask is that, you know, y'all talk about customer service and expectations, and we want to maintain a service level. And that's one of the primary concepts of Six Sigma, is that you establish the service level, you go get data that you need, you have a specialist who's working on getting the data that's needed. And, you know, I heard some things like, well, we could take a coupon sample of 50 miles of a pipeline every mile and send it off for analysis. And that might cost, I don't know, whatever, large number of dollars.
Right.
And I'm thinking that a Six Sigma engineer would decide what testing is needed and then go get it, develop a test plan and get the test data that's needed and then analyze it. And so there's several concepts there, but it ends up with detailed analysis of the data. And it might take you 3 to 6 months to get that guy up to speed and get him working. But to me, the key thing that's missing is who is going to go do the work, who's going to decide what data is needed, really needed, and then go work on getting it.
I think that to that point, I think what we want to bring to you right now is, I think that Eric laid this out as it's a 10-year plan. It's not a commitment of all the funds right now. It could be a 20-year plan if we begin to look at some of this. And if you look at our CIP over the last 5 years, you'll see we do move projects around as priorities change. And so we're open to collecting more data, creating a different type of plan to look at this. But we do think that there's some imminent needs on Town Center and North Town Center and Panther Creek. Those are the 3 projects that we have in the top 3 that we would like to get funding for the construction of Town Center, and then the design for the other 2. So that's really the ask on the table from us right now. And we're happy to come back with, to your point, whether it's Six Sigma, what we've committed to some of the other ones is to go talk to consultants and try to get a budget of what some of that would look like and what sort of scope and a fee to go with it. And let y'all decide whether or not it's worth your time and you want to pay that much money, which I don't know what that number is right now, to have that data to move forward. It's a lot of money we're asking for from you in a 10-year period. We recognize that. And we want to work with you and adapt. But we still have some short-term goals that we want to try to keep moving.
You know, I've come a long way since the meeting we had with the MUD directors. And at that point, I thought the problem was that it was a lot of money over a short period of time. And, but then I've kind of progressed beyond that. And what I'd like to do is I've been handing these documents out, and you've seen most of these before, but I want to start with these documents because it's kind of a foundation of, what is here. So the first one is the document I handed out at that MUD meeting, which basically says that this 10-year plan.
Or did you just have some for the, do you have any more?
Maybe we need, I got one more.
At least one, maybe 2.
I only have one.
Let me know what you're talking to.
Okay, I'm out. So I just took the, the 10-year cost And I took the data that Ed provided of 1.5 cents per million, and I took the inflation rate that's contained in the document, and it shows a 93% increase in cost in 10 years.
But we saw this before, right?
What?
We saw this before. I just want to make sure we've seen this before.
We've seen this before, right? We've seen this before. Nothing's changed. And then, right before the meeting, I did a Free Information Act, and I got all the SJRA line break costs that the SJRA had. And I'll be honest with you, I was kind of really surprised by it because it's 2 pages. And the total cost, just remember the number, is 1.6 million. You know what I mean? And then at our meeting in the MUD meeting, director's meeting, SJRA handed out this chart. And so what that is, so what happened apparently, Mr. Meeks told me that he looked down this chart because he said he didn't have any location data. And he picked out the ones he thought was AC related. And so that's a plot of the AC related. So, and then there was some more information in the letter that he just answered to. So you turn to the last page is, I like numbers. And so what I did was I put this together based on the data that was provided. So the SJRA total pipeline breakage cost between 2015 and 22, that's 8 years, was 1.6 million with 92 events. The AC breakage events, which if you look at this graph, right, which is only the AC, that's 42% or 39 events. And that's 689K over 8 years. So you divide that and you get 57K yearly cost, to repair AC breakdown line. And then there was a statement made that 50% of the breaks were caused by contractors. So you take that down. So right now we're spending 28K a year. 28K a year to repair all AC pipelines. That's what we're spending. So
Average of the historical
historical
pipeline.
8 years, that's the historical data, $28,000. So we look at this proposal and it's 16.7 million per year for 10 years to right now to solve a 28K line. So, I left the meeting, I was concerned, and I looked for other documents. So,
Is this accurate to your knowledge? Or,
Not entirely, we're verifying some of this.
okay. I just want to make,
it went by the data they handed to me.
Okay.
When do you think you'll have a final review of this data and confirm it as being valid?
This thing,
We
That's
just
the first
received
time
it.
I've seen it, so you're probably talking 2-3 months.
okay.
2 or 3 months?
Yes, sir, 2-3 months is what I said.
It took me about a day.
Well, correct, but I have to go back through all of
Okay,
our records
okay.
because the spreadsheet that you're showing here is the ongoing spreadsheet that multiple people had been in. So if you want correct 100% numbers,
Okay, let's
you've
just
got to
move
go
on.
back into accounting and say, can you verify this information? So
Let's just move on. Okay, so then, I was concerned. And so I looked for further documents and I found a 20-year CIP plan. It's about 50, 60 pages. I read through it and I find one mention of a 50-year life for the pipe. And what that mention says is that, and the engineer who wrote that document, pretty smart, he wrote the document that he got that 50-year life from SJRA. There's no other backup in the CIP plan. So then I read the CIP plan and said, okay, there's an asset management plan. That's 100 and some pages, 150 pages. So I get all that and I read that. And it has no mention of any life of an AC pipe in the plan. Now, you mentioned you had it.
It does, it's in there.
It's in there. Well, I did a global search on the PDF I have.
It's in a chart.
Well, it didn't pull it, but it's a data point then. It's not any engineering data. So I'm gonna shift now. So then I said, okay, I'm not satisfied with that. So I went and began Googling and I found there's a pipeline society for AC pipe and they say it's 70 years. And I did some more looking and I found a document, which is a nice little document from an agency out in California, published by AWWA 3 years in a row. It's a peer-reviewed document. It's extremely well written. And actually, if you think about it for a minute, it's a roadmap for us. It's a roadmap for us. And what they did with the same identical situation, and their pipe was probably, maybe 10 years, older than ours.
This is Mesa, California, right?
This is in Mesa, California, and it's it's really, I was shocked. And, as I listened to the videotapes and people take exception with this, if you read this carefully, it addresses all those concerns. I mean, they talk about soil movement, all that. There's a formula in which they predict that. So there's a lot of data. If you begin by saying, I want to tell you about all the reason why it's not reflective on us, but instead look at all the reasons why it's reflective of us and take the positive approach instead of the opposite. So I found this. There's also 2 or 3 more articles referenced in this document, which I haven't been able to get yet. So that's the point. So what strikes me as concerning, and what we've been asked to approve, hundreds of $1 million of expenditures. This has been put before us, and really the only thing I found is a price list, which to me this is a Christmas tree list of things they want to do, and I found the cost. I've seen no data supporting any engineering analysis to justify these decisions. None. And if it is, please send it to me and I'll read it. But I have found nothing. You guys may go out and find an engineer to write a report for you. That's fine. But I'd like to see peer-reviewed documents that justify these decisions. And there's a lot of money here. And I'm bothered by the fact that you guys have a business to run. It's your business. We're its customer. And every time someone asks you a question, what happens? You say, it's going to cost me more money to answer that question. But the questions that are being asked are normal business questions that should be available every day of the month. And
Mr.
I
Smith,
see
I'd like
none
to-
of that available.
I'd like to counter this, okay?
Okay,
We have done what the boards and the MUDs have directed us to do for many years. We provide the level of service that is requested. That level of service is to not have breaks and to not have things that continue to occur. We've got emails right now from today where there's a leak in Grogan's Mill that the county's not going to let us get in there and get, that we're having to deal with. Your analysis that shows $28,000 per year, that's just a capital expenditure. It doesn't include the way that the public perceives things. It doesn't include the businesses that are out of service for the time that the water lines are down. There's a lot of things that are not considered in that. But I also just want to say, we are not opposed to moving forward and doing some of these studies. We do not have the data. I'm going to go back to that again. We don't.
okay.
And we can't change that. And I'm sorry that we don't. I really am. I wish we did. It's not something that's an industry standard in the municipalities that I'm aware of in the greater Houston area or in Texas to have the kind of data that you're asking for. Most cities, most municipal entities run on such a tight budget, they can't afford to do these big studies. They can't afford to gather that kind of data. They look at things and it is so reactive. It's let me wait until the pipe begins to fail, then I will scramble to put it together. We are trying to provide a level of service to the woodlands that y'all expect, which is being proactive and being mindful. So what you're telling us is that maybe you're being a little too overreactive. Maybe you're being too proactive. That's fine. We've got some areas in town center that we would like to replace. We are your provider, your wholesale provider. It is our professional opinion, my professional opinion, that needs to be revised. It needs to be changed. That pipe needs to be replaced. I am not completely opposed to the idea that the 10-year plan could be 15 or 20. Chris is not either. We're not arguing that. We're asking for a possibility that it could be 10 years in a conservative world. Right now, we're asking for the money for one project. And then we're willing to bring you the information of what it costs and let the MUDs make the decision of whether y'all are willing to pay for it, for us to reprioritize and reanalyze the system. we're fine with that.
So I think a couple of things are happening, and I think that there's like some disconnects between what you feel and hear as your directive versus like changes of mud boards, right? Because mud boards change. I mean, top three agencies, water
We're
agencies.
adapting, do you
Yeah.
agree? Yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from David is that he doesn't necessarily agree with the assessment of full replacement at this time. He doesn't feel as though there has been reflective of the need of full replacement. So it's not a 10-year thing, it's not a 15-year thing, it's not a 20-year thing. So that is what I'm hearing from him.
I'm willing to adapt it to say, I agree. We can look at it and say some of those pipelines could stay for another 50 years. If we find the data for it, we don't
Yeah.
have that right.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's what I'm hearing him say, is that for him to feel comfortable with the, hundreds of millions of dollars
Right.
that we're being asked to spend, maybe it's a drop in the bucket, 150, maybe 200. I mean, we just paid almost $1 million to study the wastewater treatment plant. So those types of discussions, I think, need to be had. And then I think we need, as a board, I'm an engineer. I understand what you're saying. A lot of these board members, the other engineers in other fields, the financials, and so they're looking at it from the perspective of what they can see as an average citizen. So he's researching it as an average citizen, people that we have to explain to when we go out in our community and they ask us, why is my water bill so high? Like at the bottom line, it's always, why is my water bill so high? And so I think we need to collectively address and figure out what the goals are. And I completely understand we're several boards. We're sending you in several different directions. And so I think that the all board MUD meetings were very helpful. I think that the trustee level, I don't hear the conversations being had. Because each board has their own goals, right? We're 46. We don't have as many AC lines as a 6 or a 7. And so, well, maybe we do. Yeah, maybe like collectively, but like the majority of our constituents aren't affected by these projects. So if I'm a 6 or a 7 and my whole MUD is AC, I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's replace it all. So we all have different objectives that we're also coming with. And I think collectively we have to understand everybody's position and figure out a path forward, or else we're just going to be, in a year, we're going to be talking about this. And in 2 years, we're going to be saying,
We are bringing you the
I think that
recommendations
there's
we have.
several-
Yeah, and to your point, Deidre, there's 11 of y'all that we get to work with and we try to collaborate with and we try to come to some consensus and work really hard to get everybody on board.
So I think that because the issues that are being asked are not going to go away just by saying, well, 10 of the other boards are okay with it. Like, that's not going to stop the issues in this board
That's
meeting.
not my message here
Yeah,
today, right?
yeah.
So I mean, I respect the fact that you are willing to go dig and dig and dig, and we are continuing and willing to have those conversations with you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate your diligence on that. And I don't think that we have an action on this today. To my knowledge, we're just giving an update on what we've received.
So just so I have an understanding, the amount that you're just asking for would be just what I would look under, what, the 22 million for 2024? So that would be $12 million in, do I have the right line? 'Cause I think
Yeah, you're good. No, you're good. Yeah, so I mean, that is what we're asking for. That doesn't include the bond funding.
And so how is this 22.481? Yeah,
That's it, real quick.
you can.
Should be looking at the cost of town center construction and the other two. Okay.
Correct. So,
Is this issue? No, that's the current one.
That's the current, I've got several, y'all, so I don't,
Yeah.
This is from last year.
You'll be wanting to see FY 24.
okay. Well, I guess could you get it? Yeah, I've got everything. So could you get us how much you are asking for this year? I guess that's your budget, right? Like whatever your budget is?
So if I can interrupt real quick, just
Yeah.
for clarification. So the budget was presented last month. It's in last month's packet. Rate increase of 2%, water, 2%.
Okay.
And that includes the R&R items that cost us $6 million. No increase there. Any bond funding would come at a supplemental agreement like Brian talked about later in the year. At that time, you'll have the exact amount. At this point, I don't have it. But whatever we're asking for, you will have that at least 30 days before we're asking for.
Well, I think that's all well and good, but if we're still in dispute of the ask in the 30 days, that wouldn't give us enough time or information to say, like, if you
We're
come
not
in,
planning to change the ask for 2024.
you decided to change the ask?
No, we're not planning to change that ask that was presented in the budget last month, correct?
The budget, no, but the bond financing projects, that's where it goes. There's a big difference between the 1-year plan and the 10-year plan. So the O&M plan, O&M side, said done, off the table, y'all vote next month, August, said and done. The bigger project, the 10-year project plan is what you are kind of chatting about kind of segmenting it up and breaking it out. That's where Connie was saying, okay, you have $193 million in AC water lines. We're not going to ask for all of this. We're just going to be asking for the town center and maybe the facade.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So we,
And that's shared with all the MUDs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
and so that bond financing, how would we pay for it? Not in water rates, or it'd be in,
It would be just like we did the 2017 deal. It would
I
be a
wasn't here.
component. It would be- Well, it's still being paid for.
Yeah.
It's a component of your wholesale rate.
so what we
So it's-
collected,
Any bonds that we have is built into it, in other words.
yeah.
Once we issue the bond or they get a bond, it's then put back in as tax.
So I don't know how the other boards feel. So I think we've got two situations going on that we kind of need to address. The whole collectively, the whole of the AC and how it's evaluated and how we replace it, and definition of level of service, you know, is it all replacement? Because I mean, one of the statements in here that I was concerned about was okay, so level of service, it is predicted based on years in service and an estimate of useful life. And you know, going through that, like if I wanted something to never break down, I'd always buy new, right? But I don't have the money to always buy. I would love a new car every year. I can't buy a new car every year. That would make me feel safe that it's not going to break down. So it's kind of like defining so we understand, because we're now in older years, our 50 years. So now we're at a different position than we were when MUD started, and we all started on these MUDs. And so we have to kind of look at things differently, similar to how I think you wrote in here how Conroe looked at it. You know, they look at upsizing first, they look at how much money they have in their budget. So it's more budget based and budget driven versus we want to do everything and we have to figure out how to fund it.
And we're not a municipality, so it's not exactly that way. But I mean, overall, Deidre, I think that you've laid it out fairly well. What I wrote down was level of service conversation and the condition conversation. And I think we can continue that. So I know we've got some other things that we need to move to, and I don't want to be dismissive of this conversation, but I'm happy to talk to any of you all. I think Dan or Chris would be as well, if y'all want to continue some conversations.
Would it be beneficial to have the conversation, like similar to how we did it with the wastewater treatment plant, to where we have that focus group, that study group? Is that beneficial?
I do think that
Referring to the stakeholder group.
Yes, thank you.
You know, what I'm thinking is, you know, when I started off, or ended last week, I was in the mindset of, well, we're gonna have to replace that pipe. It's some point, you know, I don't know exactly what year, but it needs to be replaced, and we need to find a way to finance it that doesn't hurt people. I'm now at the point of thinking we need some confirmation of what's the corrosion rate, you know, in the pipe. You know, is it 15-year life? It's likely to be something longer than what we're thinking. 10 years.
Inside, just to Deidre's point, you made the comment of not really knowing what the folks are thinking. I can share, you know, this is the 9th board meeting of the week, and there is definitely growing interest from the MUDs. There's been no actions taken, but along the lines of this discussion, there's been growing interest to pivot and think more along the lines of gathering the appropriate data that we do not have, that we all acknowledge that is not there. Whether it's taking coupons, whether it's getting started on this one and then taking the pipe out as we're going, identifying whatever analysis needs to be done, and then using that information to forecast what the future projects would be, when they would be, whether the analysis says we got to do it now, or whether the analysis says, no, we got another 30 years, or whatever the case may be. And then you're making decisions going forward with that information that you don't have today. That discussion has happened, I think, almost in every meeting. And it feels to me like there's growing interest to go that direction.
And
That's all
my
I got.
guess
The other
is,
component, I think, is this discussion about level of service. And, you know, I've been here a while, been through a number of different compositions of boards. And that, you know, that has been a focus of boards over the years of taking pride in the, you know, exceptional level of service that we've had here. No breaks, no outage during the year, all that stuff. But there also hasn't been a comprehensive plan that's showing you what all the cost is going to be as a community turns 50, and what's that going to cost you? And we've had a number of mud boards that have had change, including this one. So I think part of it's going to be, yes, getting more data and all that, but then what are you going to compare it against? You got to say, okay, this tells me I've got a probability of this amount of break over this period of time with gaskets and pieces, all that. Okay, well, how does that play into your level of service? And are you going to reevaluate and maybe get, you know, some sort of a input from residents of what their level of service would
I
be?
think the
at X
bottom
amount of
line
dollars?
is the level of service should not drop.
Well, and that's
You
what's
know.
gonna have to be decided.
Uh,
But
It shouldn't
I
drop.
think, I mean, if
And
the
you should be
definition,
able to analyze how to achieve that.
So what is the level of service right now? What do you measure it by?
Well, that's a good question.
That's the problem. I mean, you end up worrying, but we have a number.
To some extent,
No,
it's
I
objective.
mean-
You can get data and
Yeah, I mean,
information from the
I-
community.
Brett and I have run businesses, and every business I've been in, we've had a level of service, multiple levels.
You were part of the stakeholder group, right?
For the wastewater plant.
Okay. Who was part of the stakeholder group for the freshwater? There wasn't any
That
stakeholder.
was before my time.
Okay. Was anybody here at that time when the service levels were discussed?
We discuss them every year during budget audit time, which is give or take February to March. Now, to Deidre's point from a few meetings ago, they have been kind of higher level the last year or two, just because we've had such exhaustive conversations before. But I do have a document I'm preparing to lay out each of the level services with the metrics that you can tie to KPIs and do benchmarking on it. So I'm laying that out at this time.
Well, if we have that, and if we as a group of MUDs, the 11 can agree on that, then you've got your parameters to move forward. All we have to do is put a timeline to it, as Deidre suggested, and budget for those timelines to determine what's going to be done, when, where, who's responsible, who's tracking it, who's accountable for it. So I'm not looking just to assign a project to let's say the SDRA, the WWA is irrelevant. I want a person responsible for it who can come back to the boards and tell them, here's how we're doing. Is that acceptable to y'all?
Sounds acceptable at this point.
Yeah.
I will just add though, the asset management plan, the one that he has there, as well as the additional one that we've just updated, it is based on level of service, and the beginning of that asset management plan does have 3 tables for level of service. So those have been in play for multiple years written down.
and I would suggest that, I mean, because if somebody tells me I'm going to, and I'm not going to compare it to Cadillac because my Cadillac was awful. So I'm whatever car is the best car on the market right now. Like, you know, there has to be some, because if somebody asks me, do you want the best thing in the whole wide world? And I'm gonna say, absolutely, I want the best thing ever. And they're like, okay, that's $1 billion. I'm like, I don't have $1 billion. And so there has to be kind of that dual conversation being had of, you want this, this is what it costs. And I think that we need to have that understanding. So then when we tell you, yes, we want the best thing in the world, and you tell us it costs $1 billion, we cannot come back and we say, okay, that's fine. We cannot come back and then say, wait a second, I didn't know it was I don't know how I'm gonna pay for the $1 billion.
And that's technically number 11, right? Like in the questions, if
Yeah.
you will, like that's the TBD. We kind of need to understand where everybody's mind was before we went and chased that rabbit down the trail. But if we can, let's go ahead and move forward. I know that,
I have one more.
yes, sir.
So, I have a motion that I'd like to put on the agenda for next month. And, I have copies of everybody. See, before I talk about this, I go to the board meetings. I go to the board meetings and, I listen. And thus far, their board members,
Board meetings?
the River Authority board meetings, thus far, their board members have been silent on this discussion. They've been silent. And, a few months ago, without any approval by us, at least see no approval by their board, they have a vendor day to spend $700 million, and they have 250 people show up for the vendor day, looking for this $700 million expenditure. And, my concern is, and I'll just, be blunt, I listen to the ear of the community with regard to your previous general manager, and a lot of people were upset because they felt that the pipeline issue was shoved down their throats. And you see the end of the political discussion. It wasn't, the lawyers are still involved, but the political discussion has moved forward. And I'm just concerned that you guys haven't learned from that, and that we're in a process to do the same thing for this $500 million. We're talking about $500 million. It's a repeat. And I really believe pretty strongly, just like Fred commented, that your general manager, the new one, needs to be aboard and be an owner of this. Because really what we're asking for is a change in management philosophy, away from age to condition-based evaluation. So this is just not, I worry that, as I listen to you, I hear some words, but I don't hear all the words that I want to hear. But it's early in the discussion, right? It's early in the discussion.
We can't commit to anything
I
until
know
y'all
that.
commit to the
I know
money.
that.
So, I mean, at the end of the day. on
But
that, right?
I worry
Right.
because I've observed the SJRA and their behavior at times, and I'm concerned. And so, I wrote this motion, and the purpose of the motion is we put in the thing, and we can express ourselves, about our expectations, what's going to happen, because I'm worried a little bit that we approve this budget, and next year we'll be in the same condition, approving the next year budget in the same condition, and we'll just keep on dragging this philosophy change that some of us want to make. And I'd rather personally, spend time talking about it, this disagreement, that we need to, go to a condition-based analysis. The age-based analysis is pretty easy, right? It hits the clock, you yank it out. This takes, this condition-based takes a lot more skill level.
So David, you'd want to put that on the next month's agenda?
Yeah, next month, we'll just put a motion, you have a copy. I won't read it, but it's been around, so.
Today, we don't have the ability on our agenda to take action.
I know that. I
Okay.
want the agenda for next week. That's all. And to me, this is kind of like a safety. You know what I mean? I think we need it.
Okay,
I'm done.
So David, one thing I just wanted to mention too, is I appreciate that AWWA article
Yeah.
for Mesa Water District, and I read it and I did see a lot of similarities in what we're trying to do now and what other communities across the nation are doing with the aging AC pipe that's in the ground. I have already reached out to some of the professionals that authored that article, and are looking to have conversations on them on the different non-destructive and destructive testing methods that they utilized, and what benefit did they bring to the overall analysis? Where were there still uncertainty? What was the confidence level in, acoustical testing versus pulling pipe out of the ground? Where is there still uncertainties on the ground movement and things like that? How does that compare to, the conditions that we are dealing here today? And it was an article from 2019. So how have they progressed and how they changed things and adopted between 2019 and now? So just wanted to say, we are committed to coming and looking at an approach for the condition assessment.
I guess what I know this U-turns are long, They take time, right? So I'm looking for what I call the positive voice. I mean, what you just said to me is a positive voice. And I'd like to have that type of dialogue about how do we, is it justified, and how do we, if we did, is how do we make that turn and go to, condition-based analysis? I get concerned when we rehash, the same story. We have the dirty water, clean water glass, and if you don't vote for this, then drink the dirty water. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for positive affirmation.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
I'll go on record and say, we're not here to drive anything down
no, I
y'all's throat,
understand.
sir.
No, I understand.
We're here to work with y'all and adapt. Deidre, as you've noted, we've got different boards here that we're needing to make sure that we're listening to and we're hearing, and we're adapting, and we're trying to make that U-turn as quick as we can. And we appreciate y'all being along for the ride.
So Dan, just to clarify, you are going to take on the responsibility of contacting the folks at Mesa or the authors of the article and give us more understanding of what's happened in the last 4 years?
So the authors that I have contacted with are the engineering firm HDR, which are 3 members on that article that I helped author. So those are professional experts in pipeline integrity programs across the country.
Well, ACP in particular, they're expert in.
Correct.
Yes, I read the article too,
So yes,
Okay, that's great.
those are the specific.
So you're the lightning rod then? You're standing up, getting all the information, right? Report it back.
Yeah, we are working on that back as we get the information.
I'm done.
So, I believe y'all all received a copy of the draft fiscal year 24 budget for Bear Branch. Start on the page here that says draft across it. That is the detailed budget. We have kind of the bottom line at the very beginning of the document. So the capital contributions for fiscal year 24 being proposed to be $901,000, which is an increase of approximately $200,000 since fiscal year 23. That is the capital contributions from all 5 MUDs. The share for MUD 46, if you look at the sheet here that has the pro rata distribution, is $145,000. And comparison for last year, I did write down those numbers for y'all. It was $113,000. So a little over a $30,000 increase. So the rest of the document is how we got to that $901,000. So I'm going to hit some highlights here for you guys. I'm not going to go through every single line item, and please let me know if you have any questions. So first thing I would like to highlight is under professional fees. You'll see there's an increase of $43,000 under engineering. That is due to the 5-year dam inspection that's required by TCEQ, as well as an EAP update. Both of those are projects that are included in the 10-year project plan for the Bear Branch. That 10-year project plan is also in your packet. So just to provide that there for you. And the next section is purchased and contracted services. You'll see $26,000 for stream gauging and water quality, USGS. Those are stream gauge monitors that used to be in the Woodlands Division budget, but were agreed to be added to the Bear Branch 5 MUDs budget because they are more directly impactful to the Bear Branch drainage system. The supplies, materials, and utilities are relatively stable. The main difference being under newspaper ads, which is related to the bid advertisements for the projects that are ongoing. The next section to highlight would be under maintenance, repair, and parts. And the largest increase here is under clearing. A couple of years ago, we took on new ownership of the flowage easement. There's new land that we did not own previously. As we've gone through this year, we're noticing that we estimated a number for clearing for that. We underestimated. So We've corrected that in the budget for next year and hopefully we've built in enough to build it to where we won't have that issue in the
So
future.
that was clearing of the
It's dead
vegetation.
trees.
What?
It's dead trees.
Oh,
So,
dead trees. Okay,
yeah.
only dead trees.
yeah, and it's a drop and rot usually. We
Oh, drop
handle
and
the ones that are in danger of harming a home or something of that nature. And then the last section for highlighting is under capital improvements. That's the dam rehabilitation project, the 847,000. That is the other project in the project plan. That is the spillway and soil cement repair projects. So if you'll flip over real quick to the back, there is a cash source use. We're estimating to be able to carry forward 468,000 from the current fiscal year to next fiscal year to fund these activities. All of these funds stay within the Bear Branch checking accounts. We keep it all very separate, and that's the money we're anticipating to be able to roll forward to help pay for that project. Again, this is another just shortened version to get you to the pro rata distribution, but it also shows you where to get the $101,000. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Or did you want to run through any of those other Bear Branch items?
I'm kind of got my head spinning right now.
Quick mention, Brett, Brandon saying similar. Just wanted to mention that, you know, we've had some issues of security, questions about security at the dam site. One option that we've been pitching to different rights is to maybe use some rudimentary technology, put some gate hands up. This is something as a camera that will allow us to put up 10 cameras with one camera, so we wouldn't have to pay for another cell. But the cameras themselves are relatively like $300 a piece, which is something for you to consider. We can do it out of our operating budget as it says, but it might give us, it might give us the ability to identify some perpetrators.
What the, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll give you the 2-minute update. Bear Branch Dam Rehabilitation Project, upstream soil cement and the spillway. You're coordinating with the Corps of Engineers right now on the contractual paperwork that's progressing. We also have an request for qualifications out on the street to list it and select the design consultant for that project. Bear Branch low flow valve vault lid replacement, that's complete. It came in just under $34,000, which a budget of was $75,000. So we are pleased with those repairs and the additional safety that is providing that vault. Brett touched on the Bear Branch monitoring report that's in your packets. I think that's, and and one other thing I did want to add, next Tuesday, the 27th, is the next wastewater all blood meeting. So we haven't talked about that in a few months now, but we are bringing that back. We encourage you to attend that meeting at 5 o'clock at Estera's office, where we'll be walking through our approach, evaluation on the capacity and the sizing and optimizing that for the wastewater treatment facility.
That's next week.
That is next week, Tuesday, the 27th, 5 o'clock at Estera's office, Woodlands office.
You had somebody, Summer, send out a note to that effect? I'm sorry?
It
should be
an
an
item in the
Fill
packet.
my calendar.
There's a page in the packet that has.
Oh, okay, good, good.
It wouldn't hurt to send out a reminder.
Yeah, we'll send out Esther sent out a reminder already, but
I've had it on my calendar for a long time. I like it when you send the, when you get the notice and it downloads automatically to your calendar. I love those.
And the flyers on page 38 in your packet if you want.
Thank you.
Details.
Anything else?
Not on item 13.
Anything else on the agenda? We got 14.
14 is the Bear and Panther Branch. That project is progressing with LJA. They are continuing to work on their model. They've completed the existing condition model and have moved on to starting to model alternatives, the alternative analysis. So that report should be done by the end of August. So that's currently where they're on budget, on schedule. Item 15 is regarding the led Spring Creek detention study. We had a successful public meeting here last month at Woodlands Township. The only real thing to update there is last week, the solar company reached out to SDRA and with opening the discussion, is there any alternatives or options to coexist out there, flood detention basins and the solar? So no decisions, no agreements, just a very, very initial conversation, and we look to follow up and provide more information on that as we. I think that's all the SDRA items.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn,
Make the motion.
second. All in favor?